All right, welcome in. Cube Show Podcast, college football podcast, coming to you on Sundays, trying to stay on track here, even with the July 4th holiday. Hope you had a great one. Great for me, get a little time away from the radio show, time with the family. Got to head down to the Grand, did Senior Bowl Hall of Fame banquet there, did the golf tournament the next day, even though I only really rode in the golf tournament. Kind of played first round with my 7-year-old over the holiday as well, even though I can't play because of the back, but got to see him out there and play, rode the cart with him. So it's a good weekend. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And if you're looking for holiday, Memorial Day, July 4th threads, our friends at Roback have great deals. Use promo code COLE20, get 20% off. Got the American flag details in the back, as well as the red, white, and blue stripes. A couple different options there. Love our friends at Roback. They do a great job. All right, I'm going to continue our spring reviews, and one that is obviously one we need to talk about, the Georgia Bulldogs. A couple more coming up next week. Then we'll have SEC Media Days. Give you a recap of SEC Media Days. May have some content for you from SEC Media Days, but I'll be doing 3 different things there and don't know how much other time I'm going to have. So we'll see what we've got going for you. And maybe some of the lost tapes from Staples and Pate will show up from last SEC Media Days, which still haven't been cleared by their legal teams. It's not our fault. So we'll see what goes on there. This Georgia team is one that I think is an interesting discussion because I do think they're the leaders in the pack for maybe not only the Southeastern Conference this year, definitely that, but maybe neck to neck with Ohio State is just the leaders across all of college football. That's kind of what I think about Georgia. So we're going to dive into it, talk a little schedule, depth chart, teams that they're going to see, what the team's going to look like, each and every week. We're brought to you by Wickles Pickles, wickedly delicious. If you don't have them, go check them out. Took some of the new Hula Wickles up to my mother-in-law this weekend because she loves Wickles Pickles. A little extra kick, a little spicy, a little different. Got the pineapples in the jar with them, but man, they're good. They are tasty. And we were devouring some of those things over the July 4th holidays. Go to Wickles.com. They always support the podcast at Wickles Pickles on Instagram. They've got different recipes, different ways to use them. They are a vibe. They are fantastic. Wickles Pickles, thank you for sponsoring the show. All right, this Georgia football team, you go back to last year, 13-1, 8-0 in the Southeastern Conference in the regular season. Then, of course, they go down in the SEC championship game. There's a lot of prowess that's going to be gone from this football team. Brock Bowers, maybe the best tight end in college football history. Amaris Mims, Ladd McConkey, Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith. Tyke Smith was great last year. Bullard was great last year. Mims, you saw the difference when he came out of the games. We know what Bowers was. McConkey was a third down warrior. Cedric Van Pram, just being able to ID, point things out up front offensively. Dumas Johnson at linebacker was great for this Georgia team. There's others as well, but a couple different running backs going to be gone. I feel like Georgia, we said last week, Texas may be the best job of filling their voids through the portal with not only players of need, but style players that were leaving and bringing in very similar players to those positions. Georgia, I feel like, did a very similar job of that and just added some power at a couple of different spots where I think you're going to look at it and say, man, that might not be a massive loss after all. All right, so let's go offense first. Carson Beck returns. We can go 3,000. By the way, maybe the quietest 3,941 yards of any quarterback the last, 8-10 years. It's just kind of crazy to think about. 24 passing touchdowns, still a balanced offense, but I just don't think people realize how good the numbers were for Carson Beck. Keep in mind, only Penix and Nix had more yards passing than he did last year. You bring in Jaden Rashada, high-profile recruit, uber-talented kid to be able to back him up, doesn't have to play right now. And my understanding is at that quarterback position with Gunnar Stockton still there, that Carson Beck has gone out and in conditioning drills, he's winning most of those. He's out in front, that he is competing, not like he's the starter, competing like he's got to go win the starting job. He's becoming more vocal, working his rear end off, and just being more of a leader for that Georgia football team. All things that if you're anybody affiliated with Georgia football, you love to hear. Because we know the talent's there. We've already seen it. We've seen him make the throws. One of the things I think that separates guys like he and Joe Burrow and a couple of other college football great quarterbacks, not afraid to test the middle of the field. That's one thing that sticks out to me, maybe more than anything else about Carson Beck, is he is not afraid to push the ball down the middle of the field. And there are certain quarterbacks in college football that if you watch them, everything is outside the hash. Everything's outside the numbers. Don't want to try the middle of the field just because they're worried that the ball is going to get picked off. or if they're not 100% accurate, it's just not going to be one that ends well for their football team. Beck doesn't have that issue. Now, so he's a guy that obviously brings a lot to the table. Can that offense actually be better than it was a year ago? I think there's a really good chance. And that's without a Brock Bowers. So you go running back first, and you bring in a Trevor Etienne who went for 753 at Georgia last year, 8 rushing touchdowns, has a little bit more juice. From what I'm told through spring practice, and you watched what he was able to do with the Gators last year, he's been an upgrade over what they had. Keep in mind, their sort of juice back, or the back with a little bit extra, was Dylan Bell, technically a wide receiver last year. Other than that, you're pretty much working with some grinders, guys that could get downhill, added physicality. But now you'll be able to take high percentage plays and turn those into explosives. And that's something that I don't think Georgia really had a lot of capabilities to do last year, specifically from the running back position. Now you're going to be able to do that, and you'll have Dylan Bell, who you can work in and out of the backfield if you want to. You still have good players in the slot that can give you some of that. And really, Brock Bowers was the guy that you did that with last year. So now you have that at running back. Also, I think, too, you've got Branson Robinson, that if he's healthy, he can be legit at 220 pounds, and you've got Roderick Robinson at 240 pounds. So you'll have multiple backs to be able to lean on, and when you do want to go physical, a little bit heavier, you've got those backs to be able to do that. But keep in mind, Etienne, they had that option with him at Florida last year with Montrell Johnson. And you would never expect, when you sort of have that scenario of, okay, lighter back, heavier back, thumper, hammer, and then sort of lightning, scat back, quicker guy, that the quicker guy, the lightning guy, the explosive guy wouldn't live in like inside zone or do a lot of downhill plays. But it was wild when you watch Etienne at Florida, he gets a ton of those carries. He's not exclusively an outside zone toss sweep screen guy. It's not really what he was. So he can handle the in between the tackle stuff. I don't view him as somebody that's not durable or not able to deal with that, but he'll bring a little bit more explosive capability while he's able to offer that. So I think he's a massive upgrade. And I know the coaching staff there believes that as well. And you'll have some options in the backfield. Where the options really become deep is at wide receiver, because you have every style, every type, every different body that you want. Have the wide receiver position for this Georgia football team this year is going to be able to pretty much give you everything from personnel, from a movement, a motion, different type throws, different type routes. You start with what you kind of know you have. Okay, so Ra-Ra will be back, and he'll be out on the outside. And you know that you've got in Ra-Ra Thomas, a guy that at Mississippi State and at Georgia has shown you he can be a big physical outside, go get the ball, attack the ball type guy. Dylan Bell, who we mentioned, he can be an inside guy. He can play outside, catch and run. He gives you all of it. Dom Lovett, as good of a slot receiver as there is in the SEC. I mean, he could essentially start at just about every program in this league in the slot. When you're talking about catch and run, explosive capabilities, he's got it. So nice couple of catches over the middle of the field in the spring game. And somebody who I think if he's kind of, showcase a little bit, and Georgia's probably not going to have to showcase anyone, he could be a guy that puts up big numbers. Then you go, obviously have an Arian Smith back who's got legit speed and can burn and can be a guy that threatens you down the field. So now Georgia has guys that can take the top off and has guys that can work different portions of the field, can be catch and run players, and guys on the outside. Michael Jackson comes in from USC, a little bit of a bigger body, can work things in the middle of the field as well. Anthony Evans, somebody who improved during the course of spring, probably in that mold of an Arian Smith, big time speed, big ability to get down the field, could be there if you need him. But then you go also bring in Colby Young from Miami, who had 563 and 5 touchdowns last year. He's another big body, red zone threat, down the field, big catch radius, attack the ball, steal it from a defender. So you have all the different options of types of receivers that you want, guys that can line up in different places, do different things. Ladd McConkey, valuable last year. You lose him, it's okay. Now you have Dom Lovett to take some of those. London Humphreys comes in, can take some of those reps. It is as deep and as versatile of a wide receiver core as you're going to find in college football. And I understand there are a couple of other good ones. And I really do believe, because I've seen a lot of these wide receiver lists, PFF had theirs out, a couple other folks have had theirs out, and I haven't seen Georgia at the top of any of them. And I know Oregon's good. I know Ole Miss is really good, but I don't see why you can't at least make the argument for Georgia to be up there against anybody else. And That's with proven commodities. That's not even talking about a couple of these young kids that maybe potentially be able to come in and give you something extra. But you're talking about guys that have proven it in this league and other Power 5 levels of college football that can flat out play. But nobody wants to talk about this Georgia group as potentially the top wide receiver core in college football. And I just wonder why. To me, it's a little bit odd. I'm not taking away anything from some of the others that are really good. Ohio State's really good. LSU's still going to be really good based on what they lost. But how you can't have that conversation of Georgia might be the best or is the best or could be the best is beyond me. But a lot of people don't want to have that. You go to tight end, you'll have more pass catching prowess. This Ben Urasek, who comes in from Stanford, is going to be a solid all-around player. My understanding is kid, when he's out there in 7-on-7 catching balls, doing different things, has been making plays. Not afraid to get out there and at least give you an attempt to block. Tough, physical, gets after it. So maybe a little bit more of your inline tight end that Bowers was, but not going to be explosive, but still somebody's going to help you in different ways. Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky are back. Solid pass catching threats. I know they're not as physical as of Darnell Washington when they're lined up next to the tackle, but they're not guys that shy away from it. They're at least going to give you that effort. We've seen what they're made of. And then you throw in freshman Jaden Riddell at 6'4", 235, more of your flex athletic tight end. Some people there think he's going to help this year as well. So now, if you want to go two-back, you've got the capabilities of do that. You've got the capabilities to motion to two-back with Dylan Bell from wide receiver back into the backfield or starting two-back and motion him out. And now you're not in a two running back set technically anymore. And you have multiple tight ends that you can run in to go 12, 13, move those guys around. I mean, it's Mike Bobo is going to have a friggin' encyclopedia for a playbook just of his formations and personnel groupings that he's going to be able to utilize. Like we talked about a little bit before, that Dom Lovett could he go put up 1,000 yards easily, but is he going to be featured? He probably won't have to be. I don't know who's featured in this offense outside of the quarterback, to be perfectly honest with you. Because we're going to get to the offensive line in just a moment, but I think that group's going to be good enough to feature one of these backs or multiple backs. I think the tight ends will be good enough to have big years if he wanted them to, depending on how the defense is going to play you. And you could go Dylan Bell, Dom Lovett. You could go London Humphreys. You could probably go Colby Young. You could go Ra Thomas. The ability to draw things up and feature things and design things for a guy, if you wanted to, is going to be all over the place for this Georgia offense. Now, a guy like Sark, who we talked about last week, going to do that. Bobo, I don't think is going to be as much focused on an individual player or players. It's going to be more of a week to week. Look for different matchups, look for different guys' skill sets that can take advantage of certain things, force people to see one thing 1 week or for 4 or 5 weeks. Then you come back and you go with something totally different or something that you haven't seen yet, and you can throw people off. That offensive line is going to be good, though. And I think they've been one of the top groups in college football the last 4 or 5 years. Stacey Searle's done an amazing job with this offensive line. And yeah, Cedric Van Pran's gone. He was a great football player. And we had him at media days last year, talked about all the verbiage staying the same with Bobo coming in and, talked to some of the different coaches there about how much he does vocally from a leadership perspective. He's a big loss, probably more so mentally and emotionally than he is physically. Because this Jared Wilson kid coming in, you're talking about 6'3.5", 310, running a sub 4.9 40. The athleticism off the charts. He probably walks in as the most athletic center in the SEC day one. And I think outside of just knowing it the way Van Pran did, because he did it for a couple of years, he's going to be as good as there is in the league, maybe in college football. The expectations are high, and they should be, because he's a sharp young man that can get out there and athletically do things that a lot of other centers cannot. Ratledge and Bobo probably be your next two centers in line. Ratledge you'll probably see at guard with Dylan Fairchild, but don't sleep on the name Micah Morris, who I have been told in practice is just absolutely murdering people. So I'm a little bit at tackle in the bowl game. He may be down inside a little bit more, offering extra physicality, but I think your numbers inside are pretty good. Out at tackle, Ernest Green, staple. He's up there with Will Campbell as some of the best left tackles entering this season of college football. No issues with Ernest Green, an absolute killer in the screen game when he gets out towards the numbers and the hash. He's not somebody that you want to be in front of when he gets going full speed. Xavier Truss will kick back out to tackle where we've seen him in a replacement duty just a little bit, as we mentioned Mims when he came out of the game. Truss was that guy that would step in. Still has some improvement to make. You saw in the spring game a little bit. Opens his hips up. His set, not quite clean, getting the feet together just a little bit, missing his punch at times. And maybe not giving up a sack, but things that I watch for, things that I see, not as clean as you would want it to be. Definitely not as clean as the other side. So you probably look at who's your next tackle off the board. Probably a Monroe Freeling. But I do think tackle depth is where a little bit of a concern may come in for Georgia this year. You want to have that swing tackle, number one. Don't know who exactly that guy is. But also, you want to look at it and say, all right, this is a guy that we know we can bank on. This is a guy we know we can rely upon, that if something were to happen to one, we're going to be able to bump him in and we're going to be okay. Don't know if Georgia has that just yet. Don't know if the confidence level is there. But I think everything else around him, specifically with that tight end group that we mentioned, probably mainly with Urasek, being able to line up next to a tackle at times and help, is going to be big for this offense. And that option will be there just because of how they're going to be able to line up and do different things. So Ratledge, Fairchild, maybe Morris inside. Jared Wilson, expecting a big year from him at center. Ernest Green, big time left tackle, trust, all the ability, has the body. I mean, I think I've said it on this show before. When I saw this kid in the spring game as a true freshman a couple years ago, I was like, good God, when the Lord made tackles, that's the one that he made. Because the waist was smaller than it was supposed to be at 330 something. The rear end was gigantic. The arms were past the kneecaps. And you just thought to yourself, how's anybody getting around him? I don't know. I don't see it. But technically and fundamentally, he has some room to grow. He has a little bit of area that I think he can improve upon. And I think that can happen. It's a team that offensively should have a lot that they can offer before the football is snapped, making you think based on formation, motion, personnel groupings, different guys coming in and out of the lineup, versatility with receivers and backs, being able to move them around. And from what I'm hearing about how Carson Beck has handled himself this offseason, all of that will be available. Things have been shared with me, like Carson Beck is seeing things in the Georgia defense that some of the coaches may not be seeing. That he's that far advanced right now with how he's processing things, seeing things, and taking this team through their day-to-day routines, what they're doing against their defense, which we know that defense can be complex. This will give you a lot of different pressures. It's going to do a lot of different things. A lot that makes you feel good if you're a Georgia football fan right now. Blue Delta jeans, the most comfortable denim on planet Earth. Flexible, stretchy. They're built for you. And you can do it online. Custom fit for you digitally online today at bluedeltajeans.com. I have multiple pairs. You can dress them up, dress them down. They can be casual. It's the only pair of jeans that you need. Got a youngster going back to college. Maybe you got a birthday coming up. Think about maybe holiday down the road a little bit. Blue Delta jeans, you can do gift card. Go ahead and get fit online. You will not regret it. You will love every second of your Blue Delta jeans, especially here in the summer in Alabama where it's hot as hell. Blue Delta jeans, get you fit. Tell Nick and the guys you heard about them right here on Cube Show, bluedeltajeans.com. Okay, so defensively, I think some people have questions about this group, and I understand it. But one thing that I don't think that defensive staff, Glenn Schumann, Kirby himself, Muschamp, get enough credit for in the last few years is how they've sort of like, sometimes we see offenses alter from, oh, they're going to lean on a back, or they're going to use the tight ends more, or quarterback's going to be more run heavy or not as much run heavy. They had the best defensive line in college football a couple of years ago, and it was still really good after that. Wasn't as good, but then what happens the next year? All of a sudden you see more safeties coming up and taking on guys at the line of scrimmage. Like Bullard was an animal coming up making tackles last year. Tyke Smith, we've mentioned this on the show multiple times. I've never seen a safety come up and take on blockers, like pullers, guards and tackles the way that he did last year. It's incredible. Do you have those same kind of guys in the secondary? Maybe not. That's okay. Might not need to, because I do think the defensive front takes a little bit of a step this year. Mykel Williams, they need him healthy. He needs to be back. He can be big time. Caused a lot of problems in the spring when he was available. We've seen him flash over the years what he's going to be capable of doing. So he's got to be there. 13's got to be out there making plays. He's got all the length, all the athleticism. He's someone that can be a part of this defense that makes them dominant. Christian Miller gives you a little bit of twitch. Guy can help you up front. Ty Ingram-Dawkins, when he's not banged up, has shown good pass rush ability. You'll also get Chaz Chambliss, who's going to be back. You know what he's capable of. Damon Wilson can be a good rusher off the edge. Gabe Harris is a guy that, man, I remember watching him late last year. He just freaking hits people. Like literally just knocks the hell out of people. Kind of reminds me of a guy that I went against that played off the ball linebacker and didn't really care for where the football was, but then ended up becoming the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Steelers and Kendrell Bell. That's kind of what I see when I watch him play football. But he's got good pass rush ability as well. And I'm told he's just an amazing worker and a guy that's always in the facility and doing everything he wants. So Gabe Harris could be a guy who helps you there. But the true dominance has come inside. And Nazir Stackhouse is somebody that's played a lot of football at Georgia. We know he can hold the point. Warren Brinson, I think a little bit quicker than Stackhouse, can give you some moves inside, but also can strike and shed. I think a very good football player at D tackle in the Southeastern Conference. He can make plays. Xavier McLeod is a guy coming along, did some good things in the spring, had a pretty good spring. Jordan Hall, I'm told, has been solid through the spring. So maybe this group inside is one that's a little bit deeper, not the top end talent that we've seen in the past, but multiple guys that can make plays and do different things inside in different ways. The holding the point part probably going to be most important because when you look at exactly what they're going to have behind them, that's where I think this defense is really dangerous. Smile Munden back, no spring ball, but apparently looks great with how he's recovering, coming along. And we've already seen what he can do in Southeastern Conference play. We've seen him on the field. Jalen Walker's a guy that I know they're all waiting for, an absolute stud, adds physicalities, had 5 sacks last year. You want to rush him, you want to put him off the ball, he can do a lot of different things for this defense. Versatility is where I think he'll help. And then Raylan Wilson, just fast. A guy that I know some people thought was going to break out a little bit last year. You lose Dumas Johnson, but he was a little bit dinged up at times. It's okay, because I think you still have in C.J. Allen and Smile Munden 2 leaders on your defense. Smile Munden, 68 tackles last year, that have played, that understand it. And then you have 2 just athletic freak shows right there behind them. They're going to be able to come in, play, do some different things. So I think with what you have maybe off the ball and what you've got collectively off the edge, I think will be a little bit better this year. Interior has a chance to be a little bit better this year. And I think off the ball linebacker with another year off season under their belt has a chance to actually be a little bit better than it was a season ago. So if you can lean on that part a little bit more, the secondary doesn't have to be as good as it was, but you still have Malachi Starks back, who's one of the best safeties in college football, if not going into the season, the best safety in college football. Leadership, intangibles, a guy that can do it all. And 52 tackles last year, going to be somebody that Georgia needs to be a real player on this defense again this year. I think KJ Bolden plays. I don't know how much, if it's 10, 20 snaps a game, probably help on teams a little bit. But from what I've heard about being around him there in Athens, the guys think he's going to be somebody that helps him this year. Again, percentage-wise, how much, how many snaps, don't really know. Dan Jackson back at strong, leader, tough, physical, grinder, worker, somebody that's going to help you. He and Ja'Cory Thomas going to be guys that obviously have that position, well, for the most part, locked down. Will corner be as good? It might be a little bit younger because you got a freshman coming in and Ellis Robinson, number 1 recruit in the country, that is probably going to play some. T-Rob's played younger corners before. He knows what it's all about. It's never been an issue for him. Dalen Everett's going to be back, long, athletic corner, who is by no stretch of the imagination an issue at all. You'll have Aguero, who's going to be back at star, who's your big hitter, physical presence that's just not afraid to come up and put his body on the line and be able to make a hit. So he can be a little bit more of what Bullard was at times last year, just physically as far as how he plays. Julian Humphrey, Daniel Harris at another corner. So you have some experience and you have some youth coming in that should be able to help that spot. I think you've got good numbers in this secondary. As many top end guys, maybe not. But I think the edge of the first level of the defense is going to be a step ahead of where it was last year. And I think the second level of the defense is going to be a spot where you could potentially lean on. So you go back to like the 17-18 defense where it was linebackers all over the place making plays, protect them, secondary not a liability. defensive line overly dominant. Didn't have to have much second and third level. So last year, kind of third level dominant. Everybody else finding their way. I think the edges could be more dominant this year. Second level dominant, and then dominant pieces maybe in the third section of that defense that's going to allow Georgia to be able to go out, be successful. I just don't see this team losing many games. I will say this. If you look at Georgia's schedule, if it was anybody else, we'd be talking about them losing 5 or 6 games. A couple of things that I don't like. And you look at kind of where they're going to play and how they're going to play. All right, so your first true home game, you have one in the first 5 weeks. Don't love that. You're also not going to be in Athens weeks 8, 9, 10, 11. But you do have 3 consecutive home games to close the season out for the first time since 2018. So you'll get Tennessee, UMass, Georgia Tech, back to back to back in Athens to close it out. That doesn't happen a lot. That'll be good. At Texas, brutal, man. Like, it's tough. At Alabama, it's going to be tough. Tough place to play. At Ole Miss, November the 9th, it's a mismatch. It's a game that Georgia just flat out should not lose. Physically, Georgia should be ahead of the curve there, and that should be a game that they just go take and should essentially roll the ball out there, say we're bigger and badder than you, and that's about it. Now, it's more extensive than that, and there's a lot more to it, but at the end of the day, that's why Georgia should win that game. Clemson neutral site, I'm not as high on Clemson as I am a lot of other people are. I do think we'll see Georgia's offensive line get a great test week 1, right out of the gate, because that front 7 Clemson's going to throw at you is going to be nasty. And I think they've got some good skill that'll test some of the pieces in the secondary that we talked about. Tennessee Tech at Kentucky. Kentucky breaking in a lot of new parts too. We've done our Kentucky spring review. So I still think Georgia pretty big advantage, even though you're on the road there. Auburn, Mississippi State at home. You're fine. Tennessee at home, November the 16th. That could end up being a tough one. Because I do think Tennessee, this will probably be the most physical, Josh Heupel-led Tennessee team that we have seen. Can they make that part of their game that much more different to be able to catch up with Georgia? Because that's where it's been really different, man. Like, that's where they have not been able to keep up or be able to hold on. So I think you've got a Georgia defense with high-level stars. I think you've got a team that you have 13 players on defense that have been drafted the last 2 years, okay? Over the last 3 years, they are the number 1 scoring defense. They are the number 1 third down defense, and they are number 2 in total defense. That group's not going away. It's not going to be any different. You lose, T-Rob, you lose Dell McGee and Fran Brown. Both go be head coaches, but you bring T-Rob in. James Coley going to be back, and Josh Crawford comes in to help with the running backs. I think there's still enough staff continuity there to hold over from what Georgia's been the last few years, even though you had to replace a couple of guys. And obviously the recruiting hasn't slowed down, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. You get an elite recruiter with T-Rob. Muschamp goes off the field, but he's still there as an analyst, so you get the parts with him that I think you were benefiting from the most anyway. Georgia's going to be in the playoff. How much of a playoff run can they make? Some going to have to do with health. Some may have to do with matchups once you get into the postseason. But I don't look across college football and see a ton of teams that are going to give Georgia fits because of how they play, their style of play, or who exactly they have that they're going to be offering up from a matchup perspective. There may be some pieces of this team that could be a little bit problematic. Like last year's Michigan team may have been a little bit of an issue. But I don't know if there's a team like that in college football this year. I mean, you look at Ohio State, got some good receivers, going to have a good quarterback, great offensive coordinator, great running backs. I don't love their offensive line. Do I look at their offensive line as being a big problem for Georgia's? No, I don't. Texas could offer some things, but hell, they're going to get Texas in the regular season, so you know what you got there. I just don't look at a lot of mismatches for this team as far as how they're going to play, where they're going to play, and what's going to happen. So I think it's a team that should be the favorite to win the national championship, even over Ohio State, because Ohio State doesn't have a quarterback returning in that system. They don't. And I don't think right now Ohio State collectively on both sides of the ball is as good in the trenches as Georgia is. So Georgia, my favorite to win the title. And the schedule's tough, yes, but because of where we're going with the 12-team playoff, the schedule's more forgiving anyway. And it's a part of that process that we've talked about the last few weeks of having to retrain our brain in different ways of how we look at a season. Oh, it's a difficult schedule. All right, well, are they going to be able to get in? Because if they get in, they're going to be a problem. And then what can they do when they get in? Does a lot ride on Carson Beck? You're damn right it does. But the kid's that good. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 pick. We're going to be talking about him as the potential number 1 overall pick. So when you've got that guy, you build the offense around him. You allow everybody else to be able to assist when they can, where they can, and you take what the defense gives you. And I think he's good at that. And I think all the leadership traits that have improved this offseason are something that I love hearing about Georgia as far as what they're going to be able to be and how far they're going to be able to go. So that's our Georgia spring review. Come back next week. We'll knock a couple out before media days. Try to get them all completed by then. Have some media days recap, maybe some special stuff from SEC media days. We appreciate you all tuning in. And after media days, obviously, we're going to be counting down to the season. We'll start going through a couple of rankings, maybe position groups, teams, different things like that. And it's going to be fun. Then it's going to be here, man. Like, it's crazy to think we're past July 4th. Like, here we go. It's coming up. So please subscribe, whether you're listening on iTunes, whether you're listening on Spotify or you're watching on YouTube. Thank you very much. We always appreciate you. Click the like, click the subscribe button. Please give us the 5-star reviews. Write in, tell us what you think. If you don't think Georgia should be the preseason favorite to win the national championship, who should it be? If you think Georgia's going to lose a game, hit us in the comments. Let us know who that's going to be. I just don't see many, if any at all. We'll be back next week.